Good morning and welcome to Value for Money radio program, Kaduna State. And the program is brought to you by Paradigm Leadership Support Initiative. Paradigm Leadership Support Initiative is a Nigerian non-profit organization established in 2016 with missions to advance accountability, foster good governance, and enhance development in marginalized and undeserved communities by promoting active citizens' engagement with the public audit system and processes in Nigeria. PLSI's vision is to ensure public accountability necessary for good governance and development of Nigeria becomes a norm. Our work at PLSI revolves around 6 strategic domains, including value for money, revenue, and expenditure. Research, policy and advocacy, citizens' participations, engagement, and involvement, climate change, adaptations, and strategy, institutional support and capacity strengthening, as well as gender equality accountability. PLSR uses a combination of research, policy advisory, advocacy, civic tech, public sensitizations, and multi-stakeholder dialogue and collaborations to achieve social change. Welcome to the 8th week of the show, Value for Money radio show. My name is Jeffrey Ngbede Adiku. My guest in the studio today via Zoom is Mr. Abdullahi Adebayo, the Program Officer, Paradigm Leadership Support Initiative. We're still waiting for him to join us on the show. And seated with me in the studio is Mr. Yusuf Goje, the Head of Governance and Advocacy Coalitions of Associations for Leadership, Peace, Empowerment, and Development. Good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Jeffrey. Thanks for having me today.
Today, we'll be taking a look at the role of citizens in public audit and accountability in Kaduna State. Yes, the role of citizens in public audit and accountability in Kaduna State. We'll be right back. All right, so quickly, let's just take a look at last episode of Value for Money radio program, the recap of what was discussed and how it went. Mr. Yusuf.
All right. Good morning, Jeffrey. Good morning to our listeners. So last week on the Value for Money radio program, we were able to a large extent delve into the audit issues around the 10% mandatory IGR that the state government is supposed to step down or remit back to the 23 local governments, where the reports for 2020 and 2021 showed that the state government did not actually remit a dime to the 23 local governments. And it is an issue of concern because the 10% mandatory IGR that the state is supposed to remit to the 23 local government is actually statutorily binding on the state to do that. That means that the state by law is mandated to give that 10%. And one thing we looked at was even from 2018, we saw that only about 42% of that amount was given back to the local governments. 2019 0%, 2020 0%, 2021 0%, 2022 just about 1% was given to the 23 local governments of Kaduna State, and that raised a lot of concern because we all have come to the realization that if really we want to address the issues of poverty, child and maternal mortality rates, out of school children, and other basic challenges that we face as a state, then the local government system must not be only administratively positioned to deliver that, but must be financially empowered to be able to address the peculiar needs of people at the grassroots. So, and for us, we believe that without this 10% IGR, which is one of the sources of income for the 23 local governments, then they have now become handicapped in terms of delivering their mandate as a third tier of the government. So generally, we also looked at issue of the independent revenue of the various local governments, where based on the Kaduna tax codification and consolidation law, has given the powers to the Kaduna Internal Revenue Service to collect revenues on behalf of local governments and remit back to them. But based on our engagements, we have seen situations where even at that, after reconciliation between the states and the local governments still don't get their due share of the independent revenue, as it were. We also looked at the fact of how it is increasingly difficult for these local governments to really deliver services that directly impact the people, because they still have to come down to the Ministry for Local Government to seek clearance in that direction. We have also the State Joint Local Government Committee Law 2019 that had outlined about 8 to 9 items where once the local governments collect their statutory allocation from Abuja, they must remit back to the state government, for example, under SUBEP and the primary health care board as we have it. So most an issue of environment and security and the metropolitan authorities, where all of these monies local governments have to remit to this government arms, if I'll use that word, in the state and agencies. So that has really limited the capacity of local governments to deliver those services that is tailored towards addressing the peculiar needs of people at the grassroots.
All right, let's quickly, that's just a recap of what was discussed last week, and this is I'll call it the grand finale of the Value for Money radio program. So, Mr. Abdullahi Adebayo, he's just joined us on Zoom. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone at home. Good morning, Mr. Yusuf. Good morning, Jeffrey. It's been a pleasure. I know the last time I joined is about 2 weeks ago. Thank you so much for having me today. Good morning, everyone at home.
All right, it's nice to have you on the show. Now, quickly, we just got a recap of the last episode of Value for Money radio program with Yusuf Goje. Now, let's talk about the public accountability, which they say is essential to achieving development and democratic prevalence. What roles do you think that citizens can play in achieving these and holding their leaders accountable?
Please, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm with you.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Thank you so much. So you talked about the role of citizens in holding the leaders accountable. At this point, I want to be very practical, and I would say, let's take, for example, what we are doing here, and of course, what Mr. Yusuf has been doing over time. Is a citizen of Kaduna State, and certainly, one of the things, of course, aside the fact that he belongs to an organization, and of course, leveraging the organization to amplify the voices of the people, to then, advocate and hold government accountable. And, putting that aside, is also to say that he's also is a citizen. And of course, certainly, one of the things he's doing is to ensure that political office holders are accountable to the citizen. And of course, they are also accountable to their policy statement, the promises they made to citizens during the electioneering process. And that is why we say citizens have a whole lot of role to play when it comes to holding their leaders accountable. It's just to look around it from the angle of monitoring and evaluation. And of course, certainly the government, the leaders are actually saddled with the responsibility of managing the resources of the government of the states. And of course, government then means the people itself. And of course, so citizens then from that angle should then start looking into, monitoring and evaluating the progress rate so far. And at the same time, to be able to hold the government accountable. But they really cannot do that without having access to adequate information to then demand accountability, which is one of the things the Value for Money radio program has been doing over the past 8 weeks to make available, data, information that citizens can leverage to use to demand accountability from public officials. Discuss audit issues across different agencies of government, where we've seen different funds not being accounted for. Last week, when they talked about the allocation to the local government, not which the statutory revenue to the local government level. We all understand the fact that the local government is the closest government to the citizens, which of course to people in the rural community, and which means that there's need to ensure that certainly they have enough revenue, enough resources to be able to impact the life of the people in the in the rural communities. And certainly that's why and of course the government not fulfilling that is not to say that citizens then need to look into the accountability perspective to then start holding and using this available information like the budget information, the audit information, the procurement information are there. And of course, these are things that they can leverage, to demand accountability from these public officials. And to say that, recently all states now, we are now in December when where all state governments are passing, are presenting their budgets to the State of Assembly. It's actually another avenue for the citizens to look into, to start looking at the budget line, to then start looking into what are the critical issues, what are the projects that pertain to human development in the state, and of course, how would they, leverage to use those information to then, because these are promises that the government have made. And of course, to look at the previous reports from the Auditor General, to look around how agents of government have been managing funds, managing resources of the government, and to then start using that to hold them accountable. That, for instance, agency A who perhaps could not account properly for social amount of money in the previous year, and of course, is still requesting for more funding to be able to, to do some sort of projects. It then means that you could not account for a little funding that was given to you previous year. So how do you want to manage? How do you want to, definitely account for the ones that you're requesting for? These are ways that citizens, the roles they have to play to get involved in all these stages of accountability, both at the budget level, to then follow it up to know the procurement, to know what exactly has been released to different agencies of government, and at the end of the year, to look at the audit report, to then look at the efficiency of how they've really spent the money, to then be able to identify where are the unaccounted funds, funds that are not accounted for, were they able to account for all these funds properly, and to start mounting prayer. One thing I always say is the fact that our lawmakers are the closest to the citizens, because they're representing constituencies. And certainly representing different constituencies means that you're representing the people. It's not possible to bring together the whole citizens of Kaduna State to come and sit in the House of Assembly. That's why you have to, bestow that trust into someone to represent you at the level of the House, to play an oversight function, and to be able to, stand for your interest within the government. So that's why, the citizens can now start, engaging with their lawmakers to hold them responsible. That, we've identified these atrocities, we've identified this fund not being accounted for, and of course, there's need for you to question the people's budget before the budget is being passed, so that it will just be that they are, stockpiled of unaccounted funds, and at the same time they just come the following year and present budget and they approve it and they still moving, and they keep moving with that circle of unaccounted or lack of accountable structure or system. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Adebayo. Now, just in case you're just joining us, the program is Value for Money Radio Program, and we are taking a look at the role of citizens in public audits and accountability in Kaduna State. And with me in the studios, I have Yusuf Goje and also Mr. Abdullahi Adebayo. Now, quickly to Mr. Yusuf Goje. One of the gains of the World Bank project is enabling the citizens to nominate development projects to the budget of the state, which is a level of inclusion in governance and development. Do you think this approach can help foster participatory governance in Kaduna State?
Yes, I totally believe that such reforms that create the enabling environment for citizens to participate in the budget process is critical. Reality is that the budget is not for the governor. The budget is not for the State House of Assembly members. Neither is it for the president or members of the National Assembly in the case of the federal. The budget is for the citizens. The budget is supposed to reflect the priority needs of the people. Because if you look at the Constitution, particularly Section 14, where 2B talks about the security and welfare of the people is the primary purpose of government. By the time you go to Section 16, you see the political, economic, social, educational, environmental objectives of why a government exists and what it should deliver for the citizen. So the budget is actually the instrument that will bring that objectives into reality, that will enable government meet its primary purpose, which is the security and welfare needs of the people. So it is only important that because the budget is put in place to address the needs of the people, then the people should inform and influence the final document, not only at the level of formulation, but even at the level of where it is being appropriated into law, being implemented, and much more importantly, when it is being evaluated, which is what the audit process is doing. So with the SIFTAS, World Bank SIFTAS program that ended, it really advanced the gains in terms of citizens' participation in the budget process, because particularly there is what is called disbursement linked indicator, which is a performance for result instrument that is used to ensure that once a state meets that indicator, there is an incentives of an amount given to that state for ensuring that they deliver on that indicator. And that DLI2, which is what is called, particularly looks at citizens' engagement. One, it talks about the budget being published timely so that citizens can look at it critically and see whether their needs have been captured. Then two, it also talks about the citizens' input document, which is supposed to be an evidence that shows that citizens are actually the ones that informed and influenced the budget. And also, thirdly, it looks at what is called the Citizens Accountability Report, which looks at the audited financial statements and simplify it in a way that citizens can use to hold government accountable as regards how they utilize that fund. So I'll take them one by one to put it in the context of Kaduna State. So sometime in 2017, some of us were supported by PEL, one of the development partners in Kaduna, to go to Anambra State to understudy how they carry out their participatory budgeting system, which is a bottom to top approach to doing budget, where citizens come together in an inclusive way. What does that mean? It means men, women, persons with disability come together to identify what are their priority needs. And in doing that, it is participatory, where women are expected to also come up with their issues, youth are expected to come up with their issues, and when it is put together using a consensus approach, they agree that for our community, if government should do this particular project, then it will impact a larger number of people within that locality, and men, women, and youth would equally benefit from that process. And when we came back, there was the harmonization of that process, participatory budgeting in Kaduna, because different partners were doing their independent work, but Pearl supported us to come together and come up with one document of how citizens can influence the budget. And since then, that was developed into a CD, Community Development Charter Protocol, which is the guide on how citizens can participate in informing the state budget. And thankfully, the State Executive Council has approved that as the official instrument where citizens can inform the Kaduna state budget. And we have seen that worked majorly at the local government level where it was piloted. And we were able to see that over time, to a large extent, on average, across the 23 local governments, we've seen situations where close to 50% of the local government budgets were informed by citizens' input. And Kaduna is also lucky because we also have a law to that effect. For the local government reform law of 2018 mandates that local government, when doing their budget, must ensure that there is citizens' input, and they must hold a town hall meeting for citizens to validate. So that has helped us to really engage and ensure that more citizens' inputs inform the local government budget. We've seen the state government also adopt that, because the state is the first subnational to sign into the Open Government Partnership. And the number one commitment the government made is around open budget, ensuring more effective citizens' participation in the budget process. And we have seen situations where a number of these community development charters that we submitted, government had actually delivered in some local government. But that is not in any way to say that the process is perfect, because one, a lot of the residents of Kaduna don't even know what I'm talking about. They don't know that the community development charter process exists. Then also on the part of government, you find out that the number of those community development charters that they are implementing is actually small. But when there is progress in the process, we must really acknowledge that in that regard. So that is critical. Then around government making available the budget, last week the state government released the 2024 draft budget. On Tuesday, a town hall meeting was done, and as civil society we have analyzed to look at the budget to see how the citizens' input inform the budget on one part, and is the budget even realistic in terms of implementation? Then when it is implemented, will it actually reduce poverty? For example, Kaduna has a very high multidimensional poverty rate. It has high rate of out of school children. It has high rate of child and maternal mortality rate. So how would the budget really reduce those critical issues? And those are the issues that analysis have helped us to do. And thankfully, when that is made available, by the time our analysis is engaged, we believe that to a large extent we will do advocacy so that government will really look at the draft budget, review it so that it aligns with delivering to the needs of the people. So the Sifters program has really helped. And some of the fears that we had was that after the former governor left, the government left, probably some of these reforms would not really be carried forward. But thankfully, even though it came late, we saw that the state government, the current administration, released the draft budget, is online. Then a town hall meeting was held. And also, we believe sometime next week is going to be taken to the State House of Assembly, where also over the past 3 years, the State Assembly has been inviting citizens to their public hearing so that we can come and make submissions of our analysis and all of that. So those are some of the realities in Kaduna. The biggest gap for us is all of these reforms. How does it translate to impacting the lives of the ordinary man? Because it's one thing to be doing reforms and speaking all the big grammar and the terminologies, but as long as it doesn't impact the ordinary man on the street, because life every day is becoming harder for the average resident of Kaduna and also the average Nigerian. So how would all of what government is doing really impact the people? And because the budget is there, we know what is inside the budget. We know that the budget is for 2024. Government is proposing to spend about 458 billion. And government is investing about 22 billion in 23 billion in agriculture. They are investing about 11 billion in what is called social investment program. That is all these social transfer, social assistance, social insurance and livelihood support. So we are seeing this, but the most important thing why all of this process is there, so that citizens can pick up this information and ensure that what government has put into the budget, which is a law, is actually delivered. Because it's one thing to have all of these things in the budget, and it's a different thing for the budget to actually be implemented. And that's why even in our analysis, we are looking at how realistic is even the budget. We are looking at the level of our debt. We are looking at the level of a lot of fundamental, even our revenue performance. How well are our revenues performing? For example, apart from CAD, IRS, and a few other government revenue generating agencies, we have about 44 as of the third quarter of 2023 that have not performed up to 50%. We have about 16 MDAs that as of the third quarter of 2023, they've not generated a dime. So these are issues that we looked at in the budget, and it's because reforms like SIFTAS at the state level, which is State Fiscal Transparency, Accountability and Sustainability Program, and the Open Government Partnership. We also have the lifters at the local government, have helped to open up the budget process so that citizens can look at this document to ask the critical question: how with all this amount that government is allocating going to really address the issues that affect the common man in Kaduna State? And that is why, as Adebayo has talked about, our participation in terms of accountability is key, because it is our money. You don't engage a contractor and you allow him to do what he wants. So we have signed a social contract with the governor of Kaduna State. So every stage of whatever he is doing, we must ensure that we are holding him accountable. Just the way if you give an architect to design your house, you give him what you want. He will design it, he will bring it to you so that you look at it to say, does it reflect what you want? Then when you give him the money, and when you give the money to the contractor, he brings the engineers and the masons and the laborers. Once in a while, you come to the site to meet the contractor to look at, okay, how much did he buy the block? Is it quality block he's using? How much did he buy the cement? And how are they even mixing the cement and the sand? So the same way we put an eye when we are building our personal houses, it's the same way we are supposed to put an eye when government is spending our public funds, because it is our money. It's not the governor's money. It's not the money of the commissioners. It's not the money of the members of the State House of Assembly. It is the money of every 10.4 million resident of Kaduna State.
All right. Quickly, Mr. Adebayo, before I ask this question, let me quickly remind our listener that the program is Value for Money radio program, Kaduna State. And today's topic is the role of citizens in public audit and accountability in Kaduna State. You can also be part of this program if you have a contribution to make, if you have questions to ask. This is the medium where you get to, ask that questions. I know lots of people out there will be wondering and asking themselves, how can we bring them, how can we hold them accountable for the funds that is not being accounted for? How did they use public funds, and what major projects have they taken charge, or have they executed, positively in the public? Now, before I move over to Adebayo, I'll quickly throw open phone lines for you to also call in and ask any of the questions that is, ringing in your mind. The number to call to be part of this program is 081 40,000 989, 081 40,000 989, 07087 800 989, 07087 800 989, 081 40,000 989, 081 40,000 989. We are streaming live on Facebook, Invicta FM 98.9, Invicta FM 98.9. Before we start entertaining some of, let's just quickly take this call. Hello, good morning.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Your name and where you calling from?
My name is Garba, calling from Zaria.
Can you turn the volume of your radio just a little bit, please?
Yes, please.
Okay, please, let's hear you.
There's a particular location around the Chukun local government area. the road between that garage area to Sabo before bridge connects Banawa. So people coming from Marabarido, Sabo, and one Sunday, and one Yelwa, and television, and so many other places are connected through that route in Banawa Junction. That road is so important that it has economic value to Kaduna State. But surprisingly, Malam Nasir Rufai, maybe I should say deliberately, decided to abandon the construction of the road. He was trying to dualize the road, and everybody was happy. But at the end of the day, he abandoned that major road. Especially, look at the road between that garage to Sabo before bridge. Okay. Now that road has become something else, and millions of naira, several millions of naira have invested in that road. And I don't know what the EFCC is doing about that. We are talking about accountability. These public funds, and nothing is done about that. And then look at the road linking between that same axis, linking up to Pujo axis. The road at some point was also abandoned, not completed. And then we have an EFCC office, one glorified EFCC office that's in Kaduna here. They are doing nothing with all these abandoned projects where several millions, both borrowed money and money that is budgeted for locally, have been expended on. So it calls to question the kind of people who have in EFCC, especially the EFCC in Kaduna. They are compromised as far as I'm concerned.
All right. So do you have a question to ask?
Yes, I have a question to ask. When will the governor turn his attention to Kaduna South, especially the road between that Sabo garage road down to Sabo before bridge? Because that road is going to also have a bearing with the kind of building they are putting up in Banawa. That market they are building, the new market they are building in Banawa, that Banawa shopping complex axis. So these are the people that will take their money there to buy things and buy so many items. You dualize the road in Banawa and then you abandon this one because maybe there are some of his relations there. All these things are good.
All right, thank you very much. We've heard what you have to say, but you don't have to go that extreme. All right, you've already passed your message across already, and let's not really take this very personal and talk about, making roads the other side and abandoning the other places. Mr. Yusuf, I want to believe you have one or two things to, add to or probably answer to what he just said.
Well, I wouldn't say per se I'm answering because the question is actually supposed to be directed to government. But one thing he has pointed out that is important that we have also raised even with the Office of the Auditor General is really how the funds that were used for the urban renewal were actually managed. Because we engaged at different levels, the Planning and Budget Commission, the Public Procurement Authority, down to the Office of the Auditor General, and probably very few people had information around how the funds were actually
utilized.
Yes, even though it was captured in the budget and all of that. But one thing we must also put to mind is that any project that is abandoned is over time going to cost the state close to ×2 of what was initially budgeted. So with inflation, by the time this current administration want to go back and start the road, they will still have to spend 2 times what probably it was initially budgeted in that direction. So that's what we have been advocating around accountability, that yes, it's not about that you're doing roads, but if you don't finish it timely, there are other factors that will cost the state more. So I understand his frustration in terms of the road. It is very an important road that needs to be looked at. For EFCC, probably you have to go and look for your evidence, then write a petition if you have such evidence, because you can't just make unsubstantiated allegations when evidence are not there to back your. An EFCC cannot go and start chasing every abandoned road. So there has to be a petition. So if he has the petition, rather than say they are not working, write to them. When they don't act on it, then you now have the evidence to say, yes, you petition and they did not work in that direction. So that's the little I have to say, because largely it is the government that will respond. And also when this government came on board, they set up a committee to look at most of the infrastructure, road infrastructure we have asked that the report of that committee should be made public so that we know at what stage are the various roads, what happened, why were they not completed, and where, if monies were released, what happened to the money, and all of those kind of questions. So it is also calling on the current administration that set up that committee to make public, because we have evidence that such kind of reports have been made public before. So this shouldn't be any different, so that if there are questions to be asked and people need to answer, then that report will help citizens to call out those people that should answer those questions.
All right, let's quickly take another call. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen, sir.
Your name and where you calling from?
My name is Lekon Rufai, calling from Kano Road.
Let's hear you quickly.
Please, like for me, I think before the budget is being to be made, there's supposed to be a town hall meeting to ask what we really need before all this 400 billion or something like that. Like for me in Kaduna North, there are some roads that they are critical, that they are just being, that we need serious attention. Just look at this road here in inside town in Gombe Road here, Kantikori. There's one road, I don't think it's up to 200 meters, that after Wharf Road, Yakubu got one that was just rehabilitated and being reconstructed. And this road serves, this is road that it is meant for just the common men that link one small market that they demolished one time ago, their Canteen Quarry. I don't know, maybe your guests know. And apart from that, look at the one in Kanta Road that link the same Muhammad Buhari way, that one was just recently, said they want to reconstruct that. So these are things that at least they are supposed to maybe ask us. Kaduna North, what I need is different from, apart from Kaduna North, I'm going Shaba, what I need is different from what I'm going Gaji and other people need. You understand me? I think these are things that supposed to, and the town hall meeting that was held, how? Was it announced? Where? How many people participated? Is it just the civil society groups or people from people from associations that were called? Even if they were called, it has to be announced, because this is the government that we said we are practicing democracy, and we are the people that voted them there. So anything they want to do, it is we that we send them. This is what we need.
Thank you so much.
Not what they concern.
All right, thank you. I think he's talking about inclusivity of the people, like maybe if they should ask them what they want before going out sick on any project. All right, we have so many calls coming in, but we have less time. So, Mr. Adebayo, I don't know, have you been listening to some of the opinions of the callers?
Yes, absolutely. I have been.
So, do you have any contributions or reactions to it?
Oh, okay, thank you. Let me just I think I should just take the last caller that talked about the inclusion, that talks about setting priorities. What are the priorities of the people, and how is more of asking a question of what mechanism is the government using to amplify the needs of the citizens before forming their budget. That's more of a need-based assessment to budgeting. Well, I believe that just like Mr. Yusuf said earlier, that of course, which he gave some practical examples of communities that probably government has probably, gets when they have their citizens chartered of demands, and which it's something that they've been leveraging on to get to harmonize what do they need, and what are the interests of the citizens. And how peculiar it is and of course how they want to put it into the budget. But there's one thing I want the caller to know. Yeah, I'm not saying this to probably support the government, but I'm just saying that the fact that it might be a bit difficult for government to say you want to meet with the entire citizens of Kaduna State to start asking them one after the other, what do you want to be in the budget? What do you want to be in the budget? And that's why I've been saying this over time, and I will keep saying it, that the closest of how citizens can make their input into governance is through their lawmakers, because they have to represent the interest of either your constituency or your basically your state constituency, or even at the federal level, your either your federal constituency or your senatorial district. So easily you can always resonate and engage with your lawmakers to please your demand. It's just for them to know, oh, as a community or as a constituency, how do you want to engage with our representative? Certainly, then you can now, even when your representative now sits to say, okay, fine, what are the priorities of the people? Of course, everybody will have different priorities. Is to now start looking at it, using scale of preference to say, oh, if you push this to the budget of this year, if you push this to the budget of next year, and see how, oh, is it 2 or 3 things we can push this? Then I believe, from my own understanding, I believe the government will be able to, get more interest of what the people really, really need, and of course, put it into their budget. But truthfully, is the fact that the citizens themselves need to coordinate that structuring to say, oh, this is how we can always engage. When they put together that kind of strategy or that kind of platform and say, oh, we have this, and the lawmakers should come, or this, even the government itself to come and listen to what we want. These are our priorities. I believe it will be easier to engage with them and to take note of everybody's priority, and of course slotting it into budgets either annually or even at the local government level. Of course, there are some things that these are little things that the local government should take care of. Push it to the local government to design and put in their budget. And if feel it's a state issue or it's a state road construction or thereabout, and certainly they can advance to the level of the state assembly or the state government to do that for them.
All right, quickly, in the last 8 weeks, we've been discussing key accountability issues from the 2020 and 2021 reports of the Auditor General for Kaduna State. Do you think this is of concern to the citizens, and what role can they play in the public audit process?
Oh, okay, thank you so much. For me, of course, I believe it's of great concerns to the citizens, and at the same time, they have a huge role to play when it comes to the public audit process in Kaduna State. One of which is what this person said earlier, the last caller that talked about inclusion in formulation of budget, and at the same time, that's what we are saying, that even if your interest or probably your opinion, your priorities is being registered and put in the budget, you should also be able to monitor to see, aside the implementation, to see the accountability that, oh, after this budget has been audited, this is the result, or was it actually the amount of money released to the agents of government to probably do the project, to implement the project, and to also monitor to the end of the cycle to see the efficiency, the economy, and efficiency and effectiveness of the project that you probably have nominated within the community or in the state. These are things that certainly the citizens have a huge role to play in that regard. So for me, I believe it's of great concern. We talked about I remember the first week we talked about different stages in the public audit action circle, and of course, where we see different pieces where citizens can plug in to then start leveraging and using the vital information at those stages to then hold government officials accountable. First of which is that's from the Office of the Auditor General, from the audit report, where all the audit report is to have the recommendation of the Auditor General, what the Auditor General has recommended to improve public finance management in the state. Certainly the citizens can start looking into that process and pick that, that recommendation to start engaging to see, oh, to see the stakeholders that should implement such recommendation, and to then start, advancing advocacy and even mounting prayer and engage with I will keep saying it, their lawmakers to mount prayer on this agency of government, and we, of course, to be able to implement most of these recommendations. That is one. And of course, the audit report, even after the Auditor General has published his report, he then submitted to the State House of Assembly to the Public Accounts Committee, who then review the audit report, and of course, to then invite the indicted agency of government to come together and hear their own opinion and hear their own side of the story. Like we said, that stage, some of these agencies still have the grace to get themselves clear, and that's why we always say these funds are not accounted for, not that they are being stolen. They might be accounted for at the level of the Public Account Committee, but if they could not account for it at that same level, it then means then the Public Account Committee then can now have put up their own recommendation on all these issues and pass to the level of the Committee of the Whole as a plenary of the House, but to adopt as a resolution, which they then proceed out to the executive to implement. It's to now say that even now talking about the resolution of the House, which means even after this mini course as the Public Account has invited all these agencies of government to come together to discuss, this audit issue. Certainly is to now say, oh, what are the recommendations? What is the resolution? That means they agreed thing that they've agreed that the executive should do on all these identified audit issues. The citizens can now start, following up with this resolution to say who are those responsible. Let's assume they said an agency of government should refund back, to recover some certain amount.
Oh, we lost that, but I think we can get him back on. But quickly, Mr. Yusuf Goje, how well is the government of Kaduna State doing in implementing this nominated project by the citizens?
Well, like I had earlier highlighted in my talk, one of the things we must realize that despite the increase in number of citizens that are submitting their community development charter into the local government and state budget, there is still a huge gap in terms of a lot of people are not still yet part of that process, because Kaduna is a state that has 10 million people resident. And that is why like Adebayo has highlighted, one of the best entry points for most communities is to go through their legislators. We put so much attention on the governors, not knowing that all the things we are complaining about is what our legislators are supposed to be there to ensure that it is done, because constitutionally they have been empowered to ensure that they approve the budget of the government, the executive arm, and before approving, they are expected to scrutinize it to see whether the needs of their constituents and the people of Kaduna State are reflected. Then even when the budget is passed, they have been empowered by law to carry out oversight during the implementation of that same budget. And when the budget has been implemented, then they have also been empowered through the Public Accounts Committee to look at how well the monies have been utilized in terms of expenditure. So just to say that before I come back to your main question, which is how well are they being implemented. So we have seen some level of implementation, especially at the local government level, where at least about 30% of what was submitted in some local governments were actually implemented. And I'll give a quick instance of probably 2 local governments. For example, in the Gabi local government, there is a school where it was gutted by fire, and the student had to be holding classes outside the classroom. So when one of the lifters grants was released to the local government, the chairman invited the civil society, the CDC champions there, where he asked them, among the needs you submitted, which one do you want to use this amount, which I think was about 3 million naira. And they said they wanted for the rehabilitation of that same school. And the chairman directly gave directives that money 100% should be used for that school, and that school is currently rehabilitated, and students are learning in it. Similarly, if you go to Ikara local government, there is a school where since 1976 they only had 1 block of classroom, and despite increase in population, students were now there was no extra classrooms, so the classrooms were overcrowded and all of that. But through the CDC process, the community nominated that they needed an extra block of classroom, and currently that has been built and is being done. For the state budget, we've seen communities where they requested for boreholes, and that has been delivered. We've seen communities where they even, for example, in Giwa, they requested for street lights because of theft and insecurity and all of that, and that has been done. But if you put it in the context of the larger needs of the people of Kaduna State, then you will not see the significance of those little projects I have talked about. But for the individuals that are directly impacted, they will tell you that they have seen the evidence. But when you are looking at it as a statewide level in terms of percentage, then the state is still far behind in terms of implementing the needs submitted by the constituency. So we are hoping that in 2024, the citizens submitted about 457 or so projects through the community development charter process. So we are hoping that we would engage this government more to ensure that we see increase in terms of implementation of the CDCs.
All right, so as we've come to the end of the session of the Value for Money radio program, Mr. Yusuf, what are your closing thoughts, remarks for the listener at home?
Well, before the listeners, I think it is only important that we really extend our appreciation to Paradigm Leadership Support Initiative for really putting this together, because information, when applied, is power. And they have used this program to put out so much information around the audit reports of Kaduna State that before now has been more of not in the public level. They have brought it out, and I think the only thing we can tell Kaduna's resident is that don't feel that when this program ends, that is when the talk ends. Really, this program is for you to begin to ask the relevant question, begin to look out for more information, begin to engage, look for your legislators, ask them what is happening, why are you there in the first place. So basically my message for them is that the quality of our participation and engagement is what will determine the quality of governance and development that we would get. So let's engage, let's continue to ask the right questions, and more importantly, let's hold the government accountable.
Mr. Abdullahi Adebayo, what's your last take on the last episode of the program?
Well, honestly speaking, it's been 8 weeks, and of course, I believe that many citizens of Kaduna State have actually, learned a whole lot, and of course, probably even how they can engage with the government, how they can hold them responsible. Just to leverage on what Mr. Yusuf said, it is very important to keep engaging and to keep asking questions, because certainly the leaders are there. We elected them, and of course it is important for them to be accountable to us, and of course so we should keep asking them that question, and we will keep doing in our home part to make available data, informations that citizens can start use to then demand accountability and to hold public officials accountable, specifically from the perspective of the public audit in Kaduna State. And we'll always, make available these informations so citizens can start looking at it, picking them one after the other, demand accountability, look at the agency of government, and of course, ask the rightful question from them. And like I've been saying, the lawmakers, it is very, very key to ask them the rightful question. They are saddled with the responsibility of playing oversight on public finance management, public resources in the state, and certainly it is important to engage with them and let them, to ask the question of how well are they, playing their role, the constitutional role when it comes to public finances in the state, and at the same time to engage with them more. So for me, I will also say thank you to everyone. Thank you to the listeners at home. Thank you to Mr. Yusuf. Thank you, Invicta FM, the team in Invicta FM generally. And of course, thank you to PLSI also for, and also thanks to our donor, MacArthur Foundation, for making this possible. And certainly, I believe we'll still probably have another edition maybe next year on Value for Money to still discuss more on recent audit issues in the state also. We are glad to keep supporting this process and to strengthen public audit and accountability in Kaduna State. Citizens can always reach out to us via our website at www.plsinitiative.org or via our social media and do at PLS Initiative. And also they can always, reach out, engage with our Value for Money platform, www.valueformoney.ng, to get more data, more information around our different audit and development projects, both at the national and subnational level. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Abdullahi Adebayo, Program Officer, Paradigm Leadership Support Initiative, for being part of the program, and then looking forward to having another episode of this program again next year. All right, and also to
Thank you for having me.
all right, and also to Mr. Yusuf Goje, Head of Governance and Advocacy Coalitions of Associations for Leadership, Peace, Empowerment, and Development. Thank you for always being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and that is all we can take on the program for this period. Looking forward to having another episode of this program next year. You know what to do, you know the right questions to ask, and you know who to ask these questions. Have yourself a good day. My name is Jeffrey Ngbede Adiko.